This is a song for my friends Jaret and Gary. They started a podcast and said a theme was necessary. They're just a couple of guys in a band that you know. Some rockstar dads who started a show. So here's the next episode.
Welcome to the Rockstar Dad Show, everybody. My name is Jaret, and Gary is here. Coming up later in the program, Chef Nelligan is going to be here. It's quite a conversation, actually. We pre-taped it, and there's some really, it's a really interesting perspective from a parent standpoint. It brings up a lot of conversation as to, something that Gary and I have been talking about, something Casey and I have been talking about, something that we've talked about with Everett's therapist on, screen time and social media and those things. It's just a constant, I think, conversation because the world we live in, it's ever evolving, and these screens are becoming so much a part of our lives. It's like, when do we introduce these aspects of these things, and when do we, anyway, it's a great conversation.
It is kind of a crazy thing. I mean, you got to think just in such a short amount of time. I mean, when your kids were little, screen time wasn't that much as TV,
Yeah.
And then, just from Tyler to Mia, the world is so much different where so much is happening right there on the screen.
It's wild, and it really is. And we're about to take a vacation, and I'm like, I'd really like to talk to the parents of the other kids that are going on. I'm like, hey, what is y'all's plan as far as, because you obviously don't want to have the only kid at the table that doesn't have a screen, but like, hey, y'all want to like not have screens at the table? Like maybe like just a united front on this, and like let's let our kids, go out and have some experiences and some fun,
like actually live life instead of just be glued to this thing in the palm of their hand.
It's like Butch Walker said, though, he takes his kid James to camp every year, and they have to give up their phones, and he goes, when he gets back home, there's about several weeks where he doesn't even think about picking it up. It's interesting. I wanted to start the show off, though, with a bit of a serious note. I woke up to some news today that those of you who know the show, know me, know the band, know about how I feel, how strong mental health awareness is, and just how my fight, the big part of me being on this planet and using my platform is to build awareness, to let people know that they're not alone. I get it. It's kind of cliche to say it's okay to not be okay these days, but I just think that is something that it just needs to be pounded in everybody's head. Our great friend of the show, of our band, someone who worked for Bowling for Soup for a couple of years, singer for the Dropout Kings, Adam Ramey, who has done so much in helping up and coming bands, up and coming artists in their quest to figure out navigating of things. And he's been a mentor and just a hustler. And Adam Ramey has passed away way too soon. And it is said that he took his own life. This is something that I'm having a bit of a hard time today getting past it. And I did that thing where instantly I took stock in, God, when's the last time I talked to this guy? And like and then I got angry, and I'm like, he knows he can reach out. I'm like, why didn't he reach out? I'm like, what was happening? And I went back through his post to see if there's, signs of it. I've run the gamut of all emotions today.
Yeah.
And where I continue to come back to is just how important. And thank you, Gary, by the way, for giving me another hour. I was in no shape to do most of my stuff this morning. I couldn't. I had to cancel some calls, and Gary was nice enough to push this an hour. I cannot say enough of just what an epidemic, this is, and how just sad I am and angry that Adam chose this path. He has a little boy named Jude who I know he loved being a father to. He has a young wife, and he has a band, and he, and all of these things. And again, I hate that I don't know what was happening. I wish he would have reached out to me. I wish he would have reached out to someone. You know, all I can say is that I think he's going to be missed. He's one of the most positive people I've ever known. This is such a, and I know it always is, Gary, but this is so out of left field for me.
Yeah.
This guy was the ultimate, just positive, just upbeat dude, and everything was like, oh man, yeah, this is great, you know, and you just such a great energy and a just a fantastic person to be around, and an infectious drive he had. And the world is really gonna miss him. It just really is. Just there's just so many things that this man did for other artists, you know, for his own projects. You know, he always had something going, but it was never like, he just always had great ideas, you know, but it never felt like he was just trying to pull one over on everybody. He always kind of had the best interest of everybody associated with whatever it was he was trying to do, you know. And so this segment of this show is kind of twofold. It's I want to say how much I'm going to miss him, and how much I regret not being close to him over the last several months. No other reason than just life gets busy, you know.
Life ebbs and flows, and everyone is busy and coming and going and doing different things. And
yeah. And you know, he's not a person that you ever really wondered if he was surrounded by people, or, you know, he's just not that kind. He just always had something going on. And but it's also I want to beat this into your head if you're listening to this. I don't care if you're a dad or a fan or just someone who's listening to this on the app, or I don't care, but there are alternatives to this. There are people that will listen. There are places you can go. There are doctors to be seen. There is a better way. And I just can't stress enough how hurtful it is. I'm not going to say that it's the easy way out, or that it's selfish or anything like that, because I don't know, you know, what goes on in someone's head. I'm not going to, that is not my stance on it. I realize that whatever was going on in Adam's life, he felt like that this was the last thing that he could possibly do. And I hate that, because he, you know, promoted so many of my own videos telling people that there was other ways, you know, and that you're not alone. And I fucking hate that the last moments of his life, that he felt that he was so alone, that this was the only way out. I'm telling you, the listener, that it's not the only way out, and that honestly, it doesn't make it better for anybody that's still here. And it really sucks. It sucks for his friends. I can't imagine how his wife feels, his family, and then this poor boy Jude that is going to now grow up without a really awesome dad who just thought the world of him. And I plead with you. If you are hurting, to please reach out for help. I know that there's a lot of different countries that listen to this show. There's support there. There's a crisis center hotline. punkrocksaveslives.org is a good place to start if you're in the United States. There are just so many ways. If you're in the UK, you know, go to shit, what the fuck is it? I'm going to tell you in a minute, but I just want you to know that there is an absolute better way to handle this, that keeps you here, you know. And Tough Enough to Care is the I'm sorry, I just kind of had a Tough Enough to Care in the UK, a new charity that I am signing on with. Just reach out, do something other than let yourself get to that point, and go talk to your doctor before it gets so bad that you can't, you know, make it through. I'm sort of starting to lose my train of thought, so I think it's probably the best that I end this segment now. But I did want to come on here, Gary, and just really, once again, I just don't know what the fuck else to do. You know, I am shouting this from the fucking rooftops, guys. You know, this is not the answer.
Yeah, there's people that care.
Yeah.
Even there's people that you don't know that care. There's people that care.
You can go to the Bowling for Soup fan page and say you need a friend on Facebook. I don't even care if you're a fan. They don't care if you're a fan. Someone will listen to you. Doesn't matter what time it is. That's the beauty of it. There's always somebody up. You know, I appreciate y'all listening to this. Gary, I appreciate you letting me take this time out of the show to discuss this. I promise you that the interview is way more upbeat than this. Adam, we're gonna miss you, man. And I am just sending all of the mojo and good vibes that I possibly can out to others that are going to miss him. And, you know, I go stream some Dropout Kings and tip one out to your homie. But, you know, it doesn't have to be like this, guys. It just doesn't. But y'all hang out and listen to this. We'll be right back with I can't see my screen, and I keep thinking I'm going to fuck up his name. Nelligan. Jeff Nelligan will be here shortly. And like I said, it's a great conversation.
It's a really fun conversation.
Yeah. Thank y'all for listening. Y'all hang out, listen to this. Welcome back to the Rockstar Dad Show. And Gary, we got credentials here. Like, this guest is like, we're on the up and up as far as credentials are concerned. Jeff Nelligan is here. Jeff, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Good to see you guys. Appreciate you having me on, man.
We're glad to have you. Thank you for reaching out. I was so happy when I saw your note, and I have to be a little bit careful because some of them are just, they're people who release books like on Amazon or whatever. And then they just, I guess, get a list of podcasts that they can send it. So I just get a form letter or whatever. But I actually, you know, when I was reading through and you open up with, hey, I'm Jeff Nelligan. I'm the dad of 3 Army officers and a parenting author and a public affairs executive or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to read on here. This is pretty cool. And so thank you for reaching out. Your second book, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, How You Can Raise Resilient Kids. And man, I'm curious. I really am. I'm curious as to what your parenting style is, because boys are not easy. And especially when they're in groups.
Yeah, no question about it. It's a lot different for when you were at Ryder High, you know, back in Wichita Falls, man.
That is right.
It's the culture is all around us, unlike when, you know, I was young and I'm older than you guys, where, you know, what was all around you was your friends and your high school and your junior high. And now it's, you know, it's all here. That's the culture. That's the life for so many kids. And it's a tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree. I mean, that's just it. I mean, it sort of seems like you're already sort of opening us up to, you know, I mean, and your kids are grown. They're all Army or military officers. And
I think that's something to hit on, though. It's a tragedy, and that's something that's hard to navigate, because I know a lot of the times parents want to have, you know, they have the best intentions, and they may say, well, I'm not going to let my child have a cell phone or any kind of social media or this or that till they're much older. But then they're the outsider because all their other friends do, and they don't get invited to the parties. And what a hard thing to navigate for parents.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, a lot of parents don't realize this basic fact, which fits into this whole digital addiction, is that 75% of the time we're going to, you know, spend with our child, Gary, is over by the time the kid is age 12. Yeah. And 90% of the time we'll spend with them is over by 18. So that parent really has to make an impression on that kid, he or she, to mold them with the values they want, the skills they want, the personality. And so the parent engagement is key, but you bring up a great point. That parent engagement then has to be stronger than a kid saying, well, Johnny and Betty and Billy have phones. Why can't I have one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I mean, and to me, this is a great question too, because, you know, you and I and Gary are from, and Gary's younger than me. You say I'm 53. How old are you?
Myself?
Yes, yeah, Jeff.
66, baby.
Okay, yeah. So you and I, and all three of us really are from the rub some dirt on it generation. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like so I'm curious to you as far as, okay, so 70% of that time that you're going to spend with your kids is before the age of 12. I wonder what that looked like, or what that should look like as far as like where you're getting at, because quite frankly, our dads went to work and then they came home and they, and this is generally, I don't know
Yeah.
your dad, but
Yeah.
they came home, they sat in front, their meal was on the table. They went and they sat in front of the TV and read the paper, and then they went to bed and they got up the next day and did it all over again. And you were really kind of with your mom most of the time, and your friends. And, but so, I'm curious as to, what that looks like from a dad of your generation, and being present.
Certainly. And, it's the ubiquity of the screens. I cut out at an early age. They didn't get phones, for example, until they were at the end of 11th grade.
Wow.
And we didn't have a TV until they were in about 10th grade. And so that segment of life we could cut off from them. In terms of just being engaged, one of the things that I did, and it was just a mechanical day-to-day life, the practicality was I tried to do as much work as I could, either in the morning, starting at 4:30 or 5, and as much at night, beginning at around 9:30 or 10. And so all that other time, I would have the freedom to do with the boys what they needed to do. The other great thing was my kids, they went to private school, but they played sports all three seasons. So by the time they got home from school at like 6:30, they were bushed. They had to do their 2 hours of homework, and then they hit the rack. They were constantly in an environment of peers and or teachers. And so that engagement was always there with other human beings.
Mm-hmm. They
They rarely engaged with a phone at all. And so that was the essential part. When you talk about the rubbing dirt on a generation,
mm-hmm.
Exactly. We were engaged with whom? Our peers,
Mm-hmm.
are the people at school, the teachers and everything. And then after school, we were either in sports or just kicking around neighborhoods where there was plenty of kids.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I sit there and I, I look at Everett, who was my youngest, and I was thinking about Gary's oldest at the same time, and really it's the idle time that they fill with their
Right.
phone,
Yeah.
and where it's sort of like it's an excuse not to go outside, or it's whatever. But you're exactly right as far as like when they are in a sport and they're in band and all of this, it's
Right.
by the time our activities and his homework are done, really all that phone is just sort of like all this in between stuff, and it and a distraction, a lot of the times.
Right. And, I agree with you. The athletics metaphor is really easy to use, but I'm talking about the band, the theater club, the scouts, the neighborhood, the church, the robotics club,
Mm-hmm.
anything that gets a kid along with a like-minded group of other kids where there's a goal and there's supportive parents and other people around to push them forward in this team atmosphere. I use the athletic metaphor only because it seems as though athletics and, like being in a band, it's almost the same thing. And I'll tell you why. I thought a lot about this before I came on. In a band and on an athletic field, number one, it's camaraderie. You're part of a team. You might not even like guys on the team, but you got to get along with them.
Yeah.
Number two, it's a personal discipline. If you guys don't practice, whether it's a guitar, a drum, a bass, or lacrosse, you're not going to get better. And you're not going to get off the bench, and you're not going to get good bookings.
Yeah.
And the third thing is the adversity. There's so much adversity in sports because at the end of a game, there's a winner and a loser. And if you get complacent with being a loser a lot, then you're going to have a lot of problems in life. Same thing with a band. You're going to, there's constant adversity in a band. I mean, I know I was a musician once and played in bands. So those kind of environments are great for building that character and that resilience that you're going to need throughout your entire life.
Yeah, theater too. It's
Yeah.
just I was a theater and a band kid, and theater, you are so emotionally invested, and when you don't win something, you really do learn,
Yeah.
because it's you talk about heart and soul, and again, it's marching band's one thing, but there's 350 kids there. When you're
Right.
in a play with three other kids and you work on it for 4 months or whatever, and you don't win the contest, that's again, man, I really do, I love it but I feel like it, a lot of it is I sit here and as I listen to you talk, I think back to, as you said, my childhood when we didn't have, we had TV, but we probably watched maybe 30 minutes, an hour a day, Different Strokes was on at 6:30,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Brady Bunch and Partridge Family on Fridays
exactly.
at 7:30 and 8. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then but really, if it was daylight outside, we were out there and we were doing stuff, but, it was a different world. I mean, I don't know that kids can
Right.
really do that these days, and for more reasons than one. I don't just necessarily mean that they'll get kidnapped, but it's like, you know, neighbors aren't as patient, with kids riding through their yards and shit, and they're not, they don't, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
it is a different world that we live in. I'm curious though, as far as your boys, private school, obviously both, all three have gone on to do great things, and it's just really cool to read about. But socially, oh, and actually, you know what? We haven't met them yet. Tell us about the boys' names and ages, please.
Sure. Devlin's the eldest. He is in Europe as a naval attaché to NATO. He was a big lacrosse stud in college and then went in the Navy afterwards. The middle kid is Braden. He went to the Naval Academy, played lacrosse there. He spent many years as a chief engineering officer on a guided missile destroyer, both in the Persian Gulf and the Far East. Youngest kid, Dar Coy, went to West Point and played rugby, actually first team All-American. He now plays pro rugby on a waiver from West Point and will go back and be an officer.
Wow.
It was a snapshot,
Yeah.
So,
No, I like
you're definitely qualified to give parental advice.
Yeah, I think that's right. How did
You
the
know,
older two feel about the fact that the youngest can kick the shit out of both of them?
Right, and he can too. 6'2", 240 pounds.
Probably being the youngest kind of formed that, right? Probably.
Yeah.
Gary, you're exactly right. No joke. Him being the youngest by about 3.5 years, he developed an inner stoicism and toughness that carried him. I mean, he walked on the rugby team as a freshman. As a senior, he was the highest scorer in the nation, first team All-American. They won the national championship. He, through just dint of sheer will, made that team and then got better. But he was that way because the older brothers were tough on him because he was the youngest. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, were they a lot of each other's social network? I mean, that's really where I was heading, was what their, what their social lives were like as, let's just say, teenagers, right? So like when you get into the point of like, okay, you're not going to have a phone until the 8th grade, I think that exists. I think it gets harder and harder each year. But what were their, if they were all three different, I wonder just sort of like what each of their social lives were like during those teenage years.
Yeah, they had great social lives. They were in this small, old, very old school, 120 years old private school from 6 through 12. And it was a really tight community, and all the kids in it were strivers. That's what happens when you're in a private school. If some kid acts up in class, the teacher points at him and says, one more time, and you're out of here, because I have 10 kids who want to sit in that chair and their parents will pay full freight.
Right.
So it's that kind of disciplined environment that I had. Actually, I went to public school, right. I had that kind of discipline scene when I was in junior high and high school. So that tight community, but they were close. And again, because they were so committed to the athletic portion and the academic portion, they just got into that. It's just muscle memory to get up every day and to do these things and to come home at night and do the homework and, hopefully excel on the field. Yeah. There were plenty of seasons where they were below 500 on different teams, but they were lucky enough to get good at something like you guys, I mean, how many rock bands are started in the garage in San Fernando Valley that, the guys are still playing in them, and they got, they're 80 years old. I mean, I grew up with lots of them, and they're still there. So guys who can make it, get that surge of enthusiasm and confidence. And that's what they got out of athletics. And athletics was a natural kind of way into the service. I also want to follow up on something Gary said, because I wanted to add one more thing, and actually, Jaret, you brought it up too. When you're on an athletic field or on a theater stage or in a band, you're publicly judged. Mm-hmm. I always would tell my kids, you go out in the field for a big game. I mean, like major college coaches are there and parents, and, it's packed. You got 300 parents who want you to fail.
Yeah.
They want you to embarrass yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
That's half the crowd, because that's the other team's parents. So you put that pressure on as a kid, and they can get through that pressure. And then, maybe 15 years later, that same kid who was in that situation is on the bridge of a guided missile destroyer in, the Gulf of Hormuz at midnight with Iranian mines around him and patrol boats coming towards him. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy they choose to make the decisions. So that's what I'm saying about that muscle memory and that ability to be publicly judged and then carry that through the rest of your life.
Yeah. And to that point too, sports, I think are such a good thing. And I was a band nerd. I didn't play as much sports. My son's way into sports, but I can see it now that, it's fun to win. You said something about your sons maybe didn't have the 500 season or whatever. Hey, it's fun to win. And I've watched my son's team be good and I've watched them win. But whenever they learn their biggest lessons, it's whenever they got their butts kicked. That's when they go. Yeah. That's when they win, or when they learn the lessons.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I've often said that the best times in my life were watching them in a tight situation where they lost, because that's where you learn something. If you've got that reflex to continue on and to rebound from the adversity, that's the best lesson there is.
Yep.
Yeah, you can have some real proud moments as a parent watching your kid lose. You can also be embarrassed for other parents when you're watching their kids lose. And I watched it last night.
Sometimes you can be embarrassed for the kids watching their parents watch them lose.
Well, I saw both of those things last night, and that's for our full episode that we're recording today.
Okay. All right.
I think when I think about this, parenting is a strategy. Parenting is whether or not the parents are together, it's a co-parenting kind of thing. And so, how does their mom fit into this? Are you guys still together? Did you guys grow up? Did they? Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. We were divorced, but she had the same values that I did. In fact, I would say 90% of the credit of how these boys turned out into young men goes to her. And I get like 10% for being a major league nag.
Yeah.
That's just the facts.
Again, make no mistake. We all know the moms are the rock stars, and we're along for the ride, but and to drive, but I think that's so important. I think that because that's what would have made it hard. Having to navigate that, had you had, these ideas about, this sort of life for your kids, and it's just like, if they were at your wife or at your ex-wife's house and she was like, oh yeah, grab the iPad. And then at your house, you're like, yeah, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Incredibly difficult to navigate. And a lot of single dads listen to this show, and it's just, that's amazing. Y'all can make it work.
Yeah. Well, as I said, 90%, 10%. And that's key. I'm blessed that way.
The book is called Lessons from My Three Sons: How You Can Raise Resilient Kids. What's the what's resilient about them? What is the you put it in the title. Obviously that's a big thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think in all the values a kid can have, that's the best, because you guys know no one gets a free ride. Mm-hmm. And so you hit an obstacle sometimes every day. Mm-hmm. Or 3 times a week, or sometimes you hit an obstacle that's like a freaking mountain in front of you. And the ability to get around it is key. I go back to word, Gary used strategy. That's exactly what I had growing up. I had a strategy for them when they were 4 or 5 years old. And the strategy was, I'm going to prepare them for the world, not try to prepare the world for them. And that means in my, my small-mindedness, I constantly gave them tests to get over, and tests that were enjoyable to them. And the best one that any single dad listening to as little kids should maybe hopefully mirror is, we were in a crowded mall in DC on a Saturday morning, and I whipped out my wallet and handed each kid a $5 bill. And I said, go get change. I said, I don't care how long it takes. And you may run into some problems, but come back here with change for these individual $5 bills. Mm-hmm. And off they went. They were delighted. It was, kind of a challenge. It was fun. And so they all came back after about, 10 minutes. One had, struck out at a couple stores. Another kid had 20 quarters in his pocket, but they all came back, and that was like the first of many, many tests. We'd go to like a sketchy 7-Eleven, and I'd park in the parking lot and say, okay, I'd say to the 6-year-old, go in there and get these 5 items, Doritos, Gatorades, candy bars, and here's a 20, and we'll be rating right here.
Yeah.
And the kid would have to go in and deal with all that, all the stuff,
Insanity.
Get the money, get the change, and then come back out. We'd be at a restaurant. I'd point to one of them and say, you're going to memorize all of our orders, and you're going to tell the waiter or waitress what we want.
Yeah.
They just kept piling up. Airports, here's all the paperwork. Go get us 5 boarding passes.
Yeah.
And so when a kid is used to getting those kind of tests and succeeding at them, when the other things that happen in day-to-day life, whether they're, on a field or in a band or on a theater stage or, the robotics club, they're going to be able to react without panic. Because if you're panicked, you're never prepared.
Yeah.
And I always wanted these kids to be prepared for all the things that life throws at us, and adults as well,
Jeff, I love these practical real world tests that you have. And I just got to ask, when is the workbook of your book coming out with these tests laid out in it?
Exactly.
I knew you were over there. I knew you were over there going, God, I love this.
Yeah.
I knew you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that they are it, if I were to describe something like to somebody, oh yeah, so we had this guy on, he's an author or whatever, and he raised these 3 kids and they're military guys now, and like he would like test them and like do these things or whatever. Like they're like, whoa, hold on, what he like threw them in the ocean or something? Like these are like useful, safe things, that can be done. And you're so right. Like I don't know. I really don't know. I think maybe he would be all right. But I can't promise you that I could hand Everett a $5 bill in a mall and tell him to go get change. I can't.
He's coming back with candy.
I don't know. He wants the candy, but I'm not positive he would know what to do instantly. I think he would figure it out, and maybe that's part of the test, right?
Yeah.
I like Jaret, you and I talk all the time, and I've got conversations with other dads from our baseball team and whatnot. And the compliment that I hear parents give other parents a lot of the time is, oh, that kid, he can actually have a conversation with adults. Yeah, kids don't know how to do that. And that's what you're talking about, is sending them out to figure it out and have a conversation with an adult and figure it out. I love it.
Yeah. And, sometimes it worked when I wasn't there. The youngest kid, the badass pro rugby player, West Point guy, he was in a mall, everything's in a mall these days, with a bunch of kids and 2 parents who'd taken them on a birthday celebration at the mall. And these parents were so disorganized. They left my kid and 2 others in the food court, and they went into a movie theater in the mall. So my 3 kids suddenly realize they're all alone. And of course, the 2 other kids start weeping and crying. But my kid, 5 years old, says, wait a minute. My dad once told me when we were at a college football game, if you are lost and you're so damn small you can't see anything, look for that guy with a stripe running down their pants, because that's either a soldier or a policeman or someone else. And just look for that pant leg. And
Yeah.
so he told the other kids there that, and they've, like, after a couple minutes, they found a guy and they went running up and grabbed his legs. It was a security guard for the mall, and they got reunited with the parents. But those kind of things paid off when I wasn't around, like my kid in the Persian Gulf,
Yeah.
That reflex to think about what you can do rather than collapse like a $3 suitcase becomes inherent in them.
Man, I would have shunned those parents so hard. I was I was a chaperone at one of my kids' field trips. I was always a chaperone dad, and one of the moms lost a kid. You only had 3 or 4 kids each. I don't know how that's hard. It's like they're like second grade, right? And they're it's just, you just keep them. It's easy. You just navigate them like ducks. And anyway, she lost this kid, and I had to like leave her with all these kids and go find this kid. And I found the kid anyway and got it back, whatever. But I shunned her. Just, you are irresponsible,
right?
And you should not be given this authority ever again. And I just can't imagine that. But I just think it's so awesome, that again, what you just said, Gary, too. Like, I love when that's one of my favorite compliments is, my God, your kids, they're so articulate and they just talk and have a conversation and, and look me in the eyes. And, I mean, I said it the other day to Everett, and as I was saying it, I was like, I didn't even have to do this, but you say those things sometimes where you just like, just let me say this. I'm being a dad, and just listen to it and let me do this. And then there were times that I was like, we're going over. So we went to a party at my ex-wife's house, a graduation party for my daughter. And they're coming to our house this next week. Well, I was just like, hey, you're going to meet a lot of people that are going to know me that I haven't seen since the kid's mom and I split up. Right. So
that's serious.
I would really like you to please be attentive and not on your phone, and look them in the eye and shake their hands or whatever. And he's just sort of nodding him, and yes, sir. And that's all that. And then, but why I was proud of him was that he took that. He listened to me. He said, yes, sir, whatever. But the whole time, in his mind, he's like, yeah, I'm going to do that, but he was respectful. And I love those little wins like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, can you hang out with us a little bit longer? I would love to keep you another segment if you got it.
You bet, man. I'd love to. Are you kidding me? I'm rocking. You guys are rocking. These are great questions.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We are talking right now with our new friend, Jeff Nelligan. His book is called, second edition, by the way, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, How You Can Raise Resilient Kids. Man, it's been featured in USA Today and highlighted by the Sean Spicer show. And man, it's a pretty quick read too. So if you want to grab that, go get it. We're going to come back with more with Jeff here in just a little bit. Until then, hang out and listen to this. We'll be right back with more Rockstar Dad Show. Welcome back to the Rockstar Dad Show. Don't forget, everybody, you can hear us every Tuesday on Adobe Radio. You can also grab that app and listen to us anytime you want. And you know what? That's great, but you can also get us wherever you listen to podcasts, and those 5-star reviews and hitting that subscribe button certainly are helpful. Our guest today is Jeff Nelligan, and I see that you put Nelly on your name on the thing. Do your friends call you Nelly?
Yeah, that's actually like a 4th generation nickname for the last name Nelligan. Mm-hmm. Even my great grandfather was called it, and all 3 of my kids were called it at various times.
I love it. Yes, my father-in-law's last name is Durkee, and he and all of his brothers and their dad and their grandpa, everybody calls him Dirk. Well, now his dad is still around, and so he's Big Dirk. Yep. And then you've got all these other Dirks, and that's cool, man. That is really cool. I gotta say, with your sons, the way that they have gone about their lives, you've had, graduations, and you've had them going into the military and then graduating from their military colleges and like going into the other thing. I wonder if any of them yet have set you down, and I'm certain that this has happened because you've written the book, but and said something to you about it and said, Dad, I'm really glad we were brought up the way that we were. It was hard, or what's the communication with them like, just concerning this?
I've never been asked that. I can tell you that before I published it, I sent it to all four of them, or all three of them, and I said, check it out. What did I get wrong? And all three came back, pretty fast and said, that's pretty much how it happened. And that was like validation that, I wasn't just gilding the lily here, and making it seem too,
Right.
saccharine.
Yeah.
I will also say that in the book, I take shots at myself, because if you're not authentic with your kids, man, they can see right through it in a second. So there's a few times they had to just kind of, say, hey, old man, take another shot at what you just said.
Right.
And I did, because I knew I wasn't going to be all the time right. Plus, I also, one of the scenes in the book, and it comes up constantly in their lives and in mine, is we drive, we live in DC in the areas, so you're just surrounded by massive, huge buildings all over the place, and then massive office parks out in the suburbs, just these faceless, soulless buildings, steel and concrete and brick and glass. And we would drive by them all the time and for different things. And finally, one day we're doing it. And I said to him, I said, hey, guys, listen up. I said, in the 7th floor of that building over there, there's a guy sitting at a desk and staring at a computer screen. And on the desk is, a mug like you made me in 2nd grade. And there's a picture of his family on the wall. And, that guy was like a big deal at Landon. And he was going to be a jet pilot or sail around the world or have a real estate empire or start a bunch of restaurants. But instead, he's sitting there staring at the screen and he's saying to himself, what the hell happened? And I said, that guy's your dad. So you've got to get a lot farther than I got. And they were shocked.
Yeah.
But it was the idea that you guys have been given so much, being born in America and having all of this bounty that we have every day. You have got to get farther than me. And, they've lived that way, but it also was just kind of a bring them down to say, hey, even the old man, in the end is found wanting. So you need to do better. And so there's points in the book that just say, hey, I don't have all the answers. I mean, I have some, I think a lot, but not all of them. And all the times that they told me to walk it back a little bit are in the book as well.
Jeff, who did you write this book to? Who are you writing it for? Is it for the new parent? Is it for the father that is needing to make a change in his parenting style? Is it advice? Like, who are you writing it to?
I like your first two. The new dad who's got a kid who's maybe 2 or 3 years old and is going, anyone, you guys are all fathers, you're holding a baby kid, that is a couple hours old. And at some point your mind says, what's this kid going to be? Yeah. Girl or boy? I mean, I had those moments 3 times. And so it's for that guy, the one who has a 3 or 4 year old, the guy who has like the 10-year-old, and the kid is starting to ease off the rails. And the dad says, wait a minute, I got to do something. And like I say at the beginning, that 75% stat. By 12, that's 75% of the life you're going to spend with them. So you better kick it in gear. So it's for that kind of dad and, at that point in their lives, and obviously a single dad, even better,
Man.
Yeah. You're that guy sitting up in that office building, but let's be honest, your resume is not too shabby. Press secretary for 3 senior members of Congress, 2 presidential appointments, in addition to being the advance man on numerous national campaigns and currently working for the Federal Public Health Agency. That's not a bad run. When you say that to your kids, what are the regrets that you look back on? I wonder, as far as like what you did with your life as professionally, not as a parent, but when you look back and you go, did you mean what you said? Did you want to have restaurants? Was that a big thing for you?
No, I don't have a single regret about my professional career, because the minute you start to look in the rear view mirror, man, you're a dead man.
Totally agree.
Because the remorse takes over and it just, it envelops you.
Mhm.
Rather, I had a pretty good run. I still have a pretty good run. There are guys that whose dads went to that school who are worth $50 million.
Yeah.
Okay. And they have, 800 feet of waterfront on the Severn River.
Right.
So my thing was that, your dad did okay, but there's so much more.
Mm.
And you've got to get to that. You got to surpass me. And, my dad kind of had the same conversation with me when I was going off to college. He says, man, you've got stuff. You can go a lot farther than I did. Almost the same exact words. So no regrets at all. Just wanting them to really, every kid has potential. I don't care if they're a knucklehead or whatever. Is to find that potential.
Isn't that one of the hardest challenges of being a dad is having the cliche of, do what I say, not as I do, maybe, but also we can see all the potential that these kids have and they don't see it, but we can see it.
Yeah, Gary, I couldn't agree more. And I'm telling you, the saddest I get, literally, and this sounds so freaking maudlin, I just dislike it when people say to me, well, my kid has a lot of potential. And it's just like, well, if you're saying he has a lot of potential, then you ought to kick him in the ass and make him realize it, because he's not going to get it by you just talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't doubt that the kid does have potential.
Yeah, fair enough. But I just wonder though, so from coming from our world, right? Like Gary and I, Gary dropped out of college to be in a rock band,
Right.
and I have 2 college degrees and just decided to just be homeless for 2 years and try and be in a rock band for a living. Each of us felt a different kind of support through that. I wouldn't say that we really had a lot of people pulling this back on us, but
Right.
I definitely, from my perspective, had parents that were going, "What are you doing? Like what is that happening?" I'm curious for you, because I can't really say, what would you have done if your high school student was this or this or this, because that's not what happened in your experience. But let's say one of these guys just, gets out of the military in 8 years or whatever, and is just like, Dad, I'm going to go live in the mountains, and I just want to live the simplest of simple lives.
Right.
Is your take on that? Yeah, go do it and do it. Be the best at it, be the best mountaineer ever. Or do you feel like you might have some disappointment that they're not using all of these things that they've gained up until that point?
That's a super question. And I've never been asked about it, but I think about it all the time. And I will tell you, in the book, I have a very similar situation happen. My kid in 10th grade said one day, "Hey, Dad, I want to be a teacher." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, he could have said, "I want to be an archaeologist."
Yeah.
Or "I want to be a social welfare worker." So I just, I'm, to my mind, and you guys are going to maybe hate it, but I said, no effing way.
Right.
There's no way. You're not going to become a teacher with all that you've got going on. And the reason is, and now I'll explain it now. So about 2 weeks later, after a big lacrosse game, we drove off from the field, and I took him to one of the less advantaged parts of the county we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And we went street after street through Section 8 housing and kind of built, beat up homes, cars in the front yards on blocks and debris everywhere and homes falling apart, guys loitering on a street corner, pulling beer cans and smoking. And we just drove there for 20 minutes. And finally, my youngest kid said, "What are we doing here, Dad?" And they had the windows rolled up and they were whispering. They were scared. And I said, "I'll tell you what we're doing here." I said, Devlin, if you become a teacher, you'll be lucky to rent one of the shacks on this street because you will make no money at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you are used to a lifestyle and you do well at it and you're grateful, but you'll be 35, live in one of these places with no money at all, no asset value, and wondering, like the man said, what the hell am I doing here? Now, it wasn't because he said teacher. that's what he said. Honestly, he could have said, like I said, archaeologist, or, I want to sell used cars or whatever. It was the whole idea of permanent stuck in a financial position that he wouldn't even be able to comprehend. And I've talked to people who have said to me, their sons and daughters have said, I want to join the military. And they say, there's no freaking way you're joining the military, because this is what's going to happen to you. Or I want to be a policeman. My guy said teacher. So it's kind of a backwards look at what you said, Jaret, of what happens if this is the choice they make.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the answer to the choice I made. And they were in shock. And they didn't say a word all the way home. And in fact, we didn't go home. We went to a party of a buddy of mine who lived on the Chesapeake Bay, with his own dock and his own boat, big house, the whole thing. Now and the reason it's not because of the teacher thing or anything else. It's because you need to have that long haul view of the long game, where you want to have the kind of lifestyle that you're used to, but that gives you satisfaction.
Yeah.
So if they decided to do that now, to become a mountaineer in Wyoming, there's nothing much I could say. I would just say, like you said, be the best mountaineer you can be.
Yeah.
But back then in 10th grade, that wasn't going to happen. And of course, their mom was enraged at me. They told, she told other people, I was the bad guy.
Yeah.
But he never brought up teaching ever again.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that happened, right? That whatever, like you were strict enough to where your boys definitely told you, oh no, my dad is like, he's strict. Like this is the way that it is. And because I mean, we all have, the friend who has the strict dad. You're the strict dad.
In a certain way. Yeah. But it was just about, as I said, it's always the long game that you're playing, even with a kid who's 5 or 10 or 18, the long game. You're used to what we have. Once you get in a different kind of situation, you're going to be discouraged and dismayed about the choice you've made. And I'm going to help you make that choice now, instead of having you have to make it at 35.
Yeah, it's something to be. It's very. I don't know that you've said this. Were you in the military?
Yeah, I was in the Army Reserve for 14 years. It's
very much like, basic training and going through all of this and really learning to prepare. I've been listening to a few podcasts that are sort of military based, and we've spent a lot of time with the Navy over the years, and so spent a lot of time with sailors, and so. But it's very much like each little stage is preparing you for the next and preparing you for the next. The idea is like our bass player rehearses a lot by himself. Gary and I do not. But I like to have to think about what I'm doing. It's part of the whole thing. It sort of keeps me in the present during a show, because my mind is in 17 different ways. So I really enjoy being just prepared enough for the show so that I have to focus on what I'm doing. Keeps me there. He likes to be so prepared that it's autopilot. It's two different ways of thinking about it. But, I guess but this is the question that I really want to ask. What kind of dads do you think they're going to be?
I think they're going to be good dads, and I'll tell you why. Because of their mom.
You are good at this.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
No,
really
it's actually, believe it or not, it's not only a good answer, it's the truth.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, as much as, all four of us have embraced kind of the hard ass macho scene, they are much closer to their mom than they are to me.
I have a feeling though, just in spending this little amount of time with you, because I freaking love you. And I'm like, I really do. I could sit here and talk to you forever, but you just have this feeling of like, you again, I said, you're the strict dad. And I didn't mean that as like a non-compliment. I'm just like, you knew the way that you wanted to raise your boys. You stuck with that, and you followed that to a T. It seems to have worked out, right or wrong. You had made that decision, and this is what you were going to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to chime in on that. The strict dad's not a bad thing, whenever it's done the right way, right? I mean, the best coaches are usually the tough coaches.
There you
know,
go.
I think very good dads have parameters. They have rules and boundaries, and you can be strict, but like not if you're just strict to be strict, right?
Right.
You also have to have the opportunity to, hey, question me. If you don't like what I'm saying, we can have a conversation about that.
Right. You know, I'm so strict that I tell them, hey, your dad didn't get far enough because he's that guy up there, Mr. Drone office boy. So you need to get farther. It's also, too, that it's the strictness. But as I said, is, you know, to answer Jaret, in terms of being dads, all boys, or 90% of boys, are much closer to their moms than their dads. I mean, I've been around parents and kids for 3 decades.
Yeah.
I just see it all the time. So they will be good parents because they're closer to her, and her qualities and attitudes and behaviors have worn off on them more than mine have. And that's good. I'm glad.
In my opinion, they're closer to their moms because of the dad. Because the dad isn't good at expressing his feelings. He's not good at, at developing that relationship. You can look at, I am very close with my boys. Gary is very close with his teenage son. You know what I mean? And who knows how it's all going to turn out. But, my 19-year-old will tell you I'm his best friend, and I think a lot of the other thing, and this is what I was going to say to you about that particular thing earlier about being when you guys were talking about the balance of strictness, right?
Yeah.
I think it's that we come from this generation of a lot of kids fearing their father, like you feared a coach or you feared a principal, right? So a lot of times you behaved in school because you were scared, and that's religion, right? That's how religion makes their money. It's through the fear. And I hope that you didn't find that offensive. It's no. But that's I grew up in Church of Christ, and that's part of the whole thing. What I'm saying is that there's a way, I think, to do. I just wonder if I bet your boys wouldn't say that they're scared of you. You know what I mean? Like you just don't seem like that kind of parent, and that's to me like when a lot of people hear the word strict, they think scary. At least that's from our generation.
Right.
If you heard somebody had the strict parents, you're like, oh shit, well, I'm not going over there.
Right.
You just happen to have a certain way of parenting that is which, again, there's so much value to the way that you're doing it. And it had to have been difficult, I guess they're a little bit older. So I'm just curious, because right now, Gary and I talk about this all the time about screens. The hardest part about keeping your kids off screens in 2025 is they go to school and they hand them one.
Yeah.
Our school literally, there's a rule, no phones at school. And then all the teachers are like, well, whenever you're doing your work, pull out your phone and listen to music. It's like, well, which is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's just it doesn't work. I mean, one of the things that I pushed from the beginning, and, there's 2 people that really had a big impact on me. Dr. Jonathan Haidt, who just wrote Anxious Generation about the debilitating factors of the screen life, and Jean Twin, she's another doctor, same kind of thing, focused on digital addiction and the psychotic natures that emerge from it, is a social media contract. You sit down with your kid, I mean, we didn't have to do this, but parents do have today. And you sit down and you say, tonight, it's a new day. You're getting an hour on your phone. And you're not going to, and by the way, the old man is getting an hour on his phone,
Yeah.
And we are not going to have a phone in the car or at a meal or when we're around each other in a living room. Oh, and by the way, the routers are being turned off at 7:30.
Yeah. That's the one that I hear.
The hammer is coming down today. And the parent, have as many responsibilities to fulfill the contract as you do.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. And if there's an abridgment of, one of the items on the social media contract, it's, Junior, give me that phone. And guess what? You're not going to see it for a week. So think about that. So it sounds very harsh and, strict maybe, but I will tell you, Gary, and this, Jaret brought it up, but I'd rather that I did these things when I was young. And in fact, the book is it's a laugh fest. I'm going to send you guys copies after this.
That'd be great.
Yeah. The book is mostly jokes about how I got them to behave a certain way. I will tell you, as I said, being around parents and kids for 30 years, I'm glad the way I did it as a parent and as a dad, because my kids aren't 26 and sitting in the basement playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know a lot of people, even where I live, where that's the case.
Mhm.
And in fact, 48% of males between the ages of 18 and 32 live with their parents.
Yeah.
So you can talk about anecdotes, but the real numbers are there. So that's always like, that makes me like my blood run cold
Mhm.
when I hear stories like that. So I think, the screen thing, Gary, as you brought up there, here's, get out your phone.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a conversation you have, if you want to, with your kids, saying, hey, you and me, dad and son, let's have this talk and this, this honesty, and I'm going to try, or I am going to.
Yeah.
It's just a thought,
Yeah, because we're all bad about it, right? I mean, that's just it, right?
Anybody.
Yeah, and
sure.
that I used to I would stop working between 5 and 6, and my phone would go on the bar, and I would not touch it again until I was setting my alarm for the next day. And I've gotten so bad about that. And I just told my wife
that's great though that you started that.
Well, I did it for years and years and years. I mean, yeah,
wow.
and Gary will tell you, I'm a absolute workaholic. It's literally all I do. I am constantly going and going, and social media has not helped with that. But I told Casey the other day, my wife, I just said, this is how I used to do it. And maybe it's not watching a TV program that is going to get me to do that again. Maybe that's on us to figure out how we're going to spend that time so that phone can stay there. And I'm not going, I'm not really interested in this show. I guess I'll pick this up and answer some emails,
Right.
I think these rules that we put in place, I mean, my son's in band, he's in baseball, he's pretty busy. And there's times where he has no time whatsoever. And whenever he does have free time, he gets to play video games or get on his phone, talk with friends. It's not a ton of time because he's so busy. But guess what? The whole year's not like that. And then there's times where he has more free time. And what I'm getting at is I don't think I get in the fault of kind of autopiloting parenting. It's like, oh, well, the rule is if he's got free time, he can do his own thing. Well, man, whenever he's got more free time, I need to make that adjustment. I need to revisit the rules. I need to make different rules or whatever for this time.
Like that social media contract.
This is this generation of dad. And that's what I was trying to say. Like before, our dad, my dad would have, and I love him very, very much, but he just, when he was home and in front of the TV, we were in our rooms or outside. That's just the way that it was. Right. Gary, is the newer generation dad, where it's just like, I need to figure out how I'm going to maximize that time with my son, or at least be in his life, during those times. Yeah. And I think that is just so important in 2025.
When I'm always asked, they go, well, what would you tell a dad right now? And obviously, if your kids are older, it's not going to work because it's not feasible. But 3 actionable items. Number 1 is that social media contract, detailed. And I have examples actually on my website. I got about 8 examples because I'm so fascinated by the thought of it and that people can adhere to it. The second thing is I always made a point when I at night, I'd take one of them and we'd walk for at least half an hour around the block, around the neighborhood. And I'd just say, hey, what's going on, man? Here's what went on in my day. Tell me what went on in yours. The third thing is, even from a young age, we read books together. I mean, you talk about old school, sitting on the couch in the living room, and they would read their book and I would read mine, or I would read to them. But the other thing that maybe, and you guys sound like you do this already, because you guys sound pretty tight with your kids. Every Saturday, I'd take one kid to the high school bleachers. Saturday at 8, man, it's the most peaceful place on the planet. And we just go there with a box of donuts and we'd sit in the bleachers and there's no one there. And I'd say, okay, we can review bleacher report. What went on today? What was hot and what was not?
Yeah.
And then I tell them, hey, there's where your dad won and this is where your dad lost. And we just talked 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just talk the whole week out, go back home, get started with the Saturday.
Man,
every kid got that.
That is like something
Jeff,
of a movie.
It really is. I like every single one of those. I think I'm only doing one of them. We do the walk. And I think you're right. There's something magical about it. Because when you pick your kid up from school or whatever, if you don't pick them up from school, whenever they get home or whenever you get home, if you do hey, how was your day? What do they say? Nothing. Nothing. You can't get anything out of them. But if you go for a walk, 10 minutes into it, they start telling you, they start asking you questions.
Like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day, but we've kept you an hour. This is Jeff Nelligan, who we now know as Nelly, and second edition of 4 lessons from my 3 sons, how you can raise resilient kids is out, and it's out there, and it's a quick read, and it certainly sounds awesome. Yeah, it's been featured in Parents Magazine, Fatherly, The Good Man Project, Fatherhood, and Let Grow. And man, Jeff, I'm so glad you reached out to us, man. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for these questions, man. You made the old man kind of scramble here.
Well, I just wing it. So again, I'm just prepared enough so that I have to pay attention to our conversation. See, otherwise I'm like on my phone while you're talking. No, I kid, man. Jeff, where can people find you? And where should people go to get the book?
Sure. The best place is my website, nelliganbooks.com. And I'm on Facebook at Jeff Nelligan Books and on Instagram at Nelligan_books. And so those 3 places, constant, I put blogs up there, things I've done, that sort of thing. News about the kids, particularly about the kid who's playing pro rugby.
That is really cool that you do that. Keep people
kind of an inspiration to dads to see it,
Yeah.
To see, hey, if you do the right things, man, not that everyone wants to be a military officer or a freaking pro rugby player, but, if they become managers of an AutoZone, I would have been perfectly happy. Because they would have been leading people, they would have been happy, they would have been in charge of stuff. It's finding that sweet spot that they can take for a long ride.
Yeah, you certainly set them up for success, and it certainly sounds like they're all 3 heading that way, man. And I hope that I hope they give you some awesome grandkids soon.
Me too, man. I'm waiting for that, brother.
Not until it's time, but I think you're going to be an awesome grandfather, and I look forward to hearing those stories from you sometime soon. Hey, come back on sometime. Next book,
you bet.
Or anytime. And guys, Rockstar Dad Show, Jeff Nelligan, and man, we got to get out of here. You guys all be good, and we'll see you. Talk to you. You'll hear us next time.
This is a song for my friends Jaret and Gary. They started a podcast and said a theme was necessary.